Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. A night of relative calm at the border after 4 days of heavy artillery firing as India and Pakistan agree to halt military action. The three defence forces hold another joint presser, say all military bases are fully operational and ready for any future mission if the need arises. Prime Minister Modi chairs a high-level meeting with top ministers on India-Pakistan border tension. Sources say certain political decisions were taken in that meeting. DGMOs of both nations held talks earlier this evening. As per sources, India is said to have conveyed to Pakistan that violation of the understanding to stop military action will be met with a strong response. Indian airspace is now fully open for commercial operations. Under instructions from the Air Force, the Airports Authority of India has cancelled the Notice To Airmen that closed 32 airports across the country in the wake of Operation Sindoor. There's a 3-month breather in the China-US trade war. After 2 days of meetings in Geneva, China agrees to cut tariffs on US imports to 10% for 90 days. The US slashes duties on Chinese goods to 30% from the earlier 145%. Global markets cheered the de-escalation in the trade war between US and China. The stopping of hostilities between India and Pakistan add to the relief across Asia. Indian equities see their best day in 4 years. The sensex and the nifty jump 4% each. President Trump promises to bring down prices of prescription drugs in the US by 30 to 80%, says he will sign an executive order to bring in what is called most favored nation pricing for drugs, says the policy will see the US paying the same price as the nation that pays the lowest price for any drug. Even as Japan's Sumitomo Mitsui awaits RBI and CCI nod to buy 20% stake in Yes Bank from SBI and other banks, Yes Bank CEO Prashant Kumar tells CNBC-TV18 the deal can improve the bank's rating. Also, will give Yes Bank opportunities for lower-cost funds and lending fee-based income. Chinese fintech giant Antfin looks to sell up to 4% of its stake in digital payments firm Paytm through a block deal at the floor price of 809 rupees and 75 paise a share. Antfin stands to gain over 2,000 crore rupees from the sale. Gensol promoter and MD Anmol Singh Jaggi and whole-time director Puneet Singh Jaggi resigned from the company. Their resignation comes nearly a month after the market regulator barred them from holding key positions. Virat Kohli retires from Test cricket, saying it's not easy, but it feels right. Brings the curtains down on an illustrious 14-year career, the fourth highest Indian run scorer in red ball cricket. Kohli also signs off as India's most successful Test captain. Well, let's go straight to the big story tonight. There has been close to 24 hours of relative calm at the border after 4 days of heavy artillery firing as India and Pakistan reached an understanding to halt military action. Defence Ministry sources said that the night remained largely peaceful across Jammu and Kashmir and other areas along the international border. Prime Minister Modi chaired a high-level meeting with Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, NSA Ajit Doval and all three service chiefs on the India-Pakistan tensions. Sources say that certain political decisions were taken in that meeting. The three defence forces held another joint press conference and showed the damage caused to Pakistan's air bases. They revealed that India used a multi-layered air defence system to minimise damage from Pakistan's attacks. Air Marshal A.K. Bharti said all of India's military bases continue to remain fully operational and are ready for any future mission should the need arise. He added that the Indian Air Force did not strike Pakistan's Kirana Hills. Take a look.
The Twitter is abuzz with the fact that we hit a site called Kirana Hills, which is supposed to be the nuclear storage facility. And there is a lot of rumors about Sargodha. There are foreign analysts who've mentioned that the Sargodha attack led to certain leaks. Is there a confirmation that we actually hit Kirana Hills, or we were careful of not to do any such thing? Thank you.
Thank you for telling us that Kirana Hill houses some nuclear installation. We did not know about it. Okay. And we've not hit Kirana Hills, whatever is there. Okay. I did not brief in my briefing yesterday. Thank you. All our military bases, all our systems continue to remain fully operational and ready to undertake any future missions should the need so arise. It is a cat and mouse game, and you have to be ahead of the curve to beat your adversary. So that is what is going to happen. So if you ask, was this different? Was this engagement different? Definitely it was different. And a lot of new aspects have come out, but we were prepared for it. We were trained for it, and we were equipped for it.
ये 70 का दशक था और उस समय इंग्लैंड और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के बीच में आज शायद क्रिकेट की बात भी करनी चाहिए, क्योंकि मैं देख रहा था कि विराट कोहली ने टेस्ट क्रिकेट से रिटायरमेंट ले ली। कई भारतीयों की तरह वो मेरे भी फेवरेट क्रिकेटर हैं। ऑस्ट्रेलियंस ने उस समय एक कहावत निकाली थी, दैट फ्रॉम एशेज टू एशेज एंड फ्रॉम डस्ट टू डस्ट, इफ थॉमो डोंट गेट हियर देन लिली श्योरली मस्ट। और अगर आप इस लेयर को देखें तो आप समझ जाएंगे कि मैं आपको क्या बताने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं।
Well, the joint press conference there of the DGMOs and DGMO level talks between both nations, that's India and Pakistan, also concluded this evening. Sources tell us that India is said to have conveyed to Pakistan that violation of the understanding to stop military action will be met with a strong response. Parikshit joins us now with more. Parikshit, the DGMO talks between India and Pakistan concluding. What do we know about what was discussed?
Well, sources telling us that the DGMO talks took place around 5 p.m. this evening, and it was limited to the issue of the understanding reached to stop firing and military action. This understanding was reached on 10th May, and there were only further discussions on that, on how to ensure peace at the border, how to make sure that this understanding to stop firing, artillery sharing, drone attacks, and using of fighter aircraft is put on hold till the time the next DGMO's conversation takes place. Nothing beyond that. We were also told that Pakistan had requested for postponement of talks from noon to about 5 p.m. this evening. The reason being they wanted to bring up more issues on the table, including the Indus Waters Treaty. India made it very clear that there is going to be no other conversation. There is only going to be one issue as to how to ensure this understanding continues. And we also warned them that if there is any further strike or violation of this understanding, then there will be a strong, robust and punitive response. So the DGMOs of the two countries are likely to speak again soon. And at the same time, India will keep Operation Sindoor on. Operation Sindoor continues. No change in operational deployments of the three forces. The Indian Navy, the Air Force and the Army remain at high alert.
Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. And a CNBC-TV18 News break now confirmed the government has fully opened the Indian airspace for commercial operations. A new notice to airmen has been released for the opening of all the 32 airports that were directed to shut amidst the India-Pakistan conflict. However, sources indicate that airlines may take some time to resume flight operations as they will have to inform passengers in advance. IndiGo's already resumed flights from Delhi to 3 of these airports. Madiha is standing by with more. So, Madiha, this is a clear indication that the government assessment of the threat perception has moved lower on the ladder, and that is why we've seen a resumption, not a resumption fully yet, but at least the possibility of a full resumption of civilian operations across those 32 airports. How quickly will we see normalcy return? What are you picking up?
Absolutely. Things are slowly returning to normal. CNBC-TV18 had reported in the morning, like you mentioned, that new NOTAMs, which is Notice to Airmen, will be issued to withdraw the cancellation of civil flights at the 32 airports. We were informed by airport officials about the reopening of these airports, and soon later it was confirmed by the government that NOTAMs to reopen 32 airports have been issued, which means all the airports across Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal, Rajasthan and Gujarat and Punjab that were closed due to military action will now open for civil flights. But the reopening of airports doesn't mean that all flights will resume immediately today. If you look at the video that we captured from a live tracker, Flight Radar 24, the airspace in these states looks pretty much empty except for Gujarat, where flights are seen flying over the border region. Remember, these 32 airports were closed for operations since the 7th of May. The closure was extended till the 15th of May, and airlines had cancelled flights to these airports till the 15th of May. Now, IndiGo and Air India Express have announced that they are progressively commencing operations on the closed routes. IndiGo has already resumed flights to 3 airports, which is Chandigarh, Amritsar and Jammu. The Jammu flight has already taken off. Since airlines have to plan in advance, open bookings, inform passengers, some flights may resume later today or maybe tomorrow. But most likely, normalcy in flight operations of the affected routes may take some time. But this is a clear indication of at least normalcy returning. And if we look at the Pakistani airspace, it has many international flights flying over its airspace. Many Gulf airlines like Fly Dubai, Fly Nas, Iraqi Airways and Saudia are flying to and from Pakistan to Islamabad, to Lahore, to Karachi. It is important to note that Pakistan continues to close its airspace for Indian airlines. India too has closed its airspace for Pakistani carriers. So the rerouting of international flights by Indian carriers will continue, and complete normalcy may take more time.
Madiha, many thanks for joining us. The other big story, the US and China have agreed to drastically pause tariffs for a period of 90 days. This announcement was made after 2 days of trade negotiations between the American and Chinese officials in Geneva. Now, as per the agreement, the US will temporarily lower its overall tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% down to 30%. So that's the kind of reduction we're talking about. China will cut its levies on American imports from 125% to 10%. Both countries will establish a mechanism to continue discussions beyond the 90-day period. Take a look at Scott Bessent.
We do not want a generalized decoupling from China, but what we do want is a decoupling for strategic necessities, which we were unable to obtain during COVID, and we realized that efficient supply chains were not resilient supply chains. So we are going to create our own steel, protect our steel industry, they work on critical medicines, on semiconductors. So we are doing that, and the reciprocal tariffs have nothing to do with the specific industry tariffs. One of the goals here is to open China for American businesses in a fair way. We want American businesses to be able to sell into China, and part of the goal is bringing down these unfair non-tariff trade barriers, and that's what we will be focusing on.
Over the past 3 months or so, the global trade war, which was provoked or initiated by the United States, has caught global attention. China's position towards this trade war has been clear and consistent, and that is, China doesn't want to fight a trade war because trade wars produce no winners. But if the US insists on forcing this war upon us, China will not be afraid of it and will fight to the end.
Big headlines on US-China trade front. And this one's actually bigger than what was expected. Actually, this is better than the most optimistic expectations. Both sides have hit the pause button for now. Now, the US has slashed tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% all the way down to 30%, but only for 90 days. So that's why it's a pause. China is also cutting tariffs on American goods from 125% to just 10%. Again, for 90 days, the pause. Now, these are massive reductions for sure. So while 30% is the number in all headlines, the real number markets are watching for is 38.6%. What is this number, 38.6%? That's the effective tariff which US will impose on Chinese goods. I spoke with economists at Citi, and they calculate that after you add back the legacy tariffs, the tariffs which were imposed by Trump himself and he's inherited in his second term, and then you subtract the exemptions which were provided for consumer electronics, Chinese consumer electronics, which came in earlier, that number comes to 38.6%. What's next, right? I mean, I think that's the other question which many are asking. The fentanyl tariffs, which is at 20%, and that's very much still there, could be the next lever in this negotiation. It is widely seen as a low-hanging fruit for both sides to keep the momentum going. We even heard Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, talk about this in terms of how willing China was, how open China was about helping US in this regard. The other thing, from a Chinese financial market perspective, is that, people were expecting government stimulus to buffer the impact of this trade war. Well, perhaps that will be delayed now. The Chinese government, in all likelihood, will be in a wait-and-watch mode. Now, the cuts matter to China. It matters to US as well, but it matters to the rest of the world as well. Chinese exporters now have more breathing space. The tariff gap between China, basically the tariffs on Chinese goods and other trading partners, the rest of the world, has narrowed significantly. giving them more room to compete on global pricing. And I think as we go through the next couple of days and weeks, we'll hear more about this from industries and specific companies. Are there any U-turns we should expect, or will these announcements now stick in terms of what's being done? Well, that depends on how well Trump is able to sell it to his voters. Republicans, Make America Great Again, that crowd, that constituency in the United States. Remember that China hasn't really put any big new commitments on the table yet for getting these lower tariffs, or at least we've not seen them being announced publicly. That's the political risk back home in the US. Will Trump be seen as compromising too much too soon? If that narrative starts to take hold, I think expect a much tougher approach in the next round, because they'd want to be seen strong and having an upper hand. There is, of course, also history which cautions us. Back in 2018, during Trump's first term, the US and China agreed, like today, to a 90-day suspension of tariffs. While the deadline back then was extended after the expiry of the pause, the dispute, as we all know, escalated between both countries. So yes, while, for now, Shireen, it does feel like tensions have peaked out, and I think global trade and, of course, global markets will heave a big sigh of relief, and they should. History tells us with Trump, nothing is off the table. So I guess we'll have to stay tuned for what comes our way. Back to you.
Well, we do have to be mindful of that, Prashant. But today, the markets across the globe are cheering the breakthrough between the US and China. Dow opened at its highest levels in 2 months. And back home, the Indian market recorded its best day in 4 years. The sensex and the nifty up almost 4%. The nifty bank up 3.5%. The mid-cap index up over 4%, closing at a 7-month high. BSE listed companies adding market cap of nearly 16 lakh crore rupees today. IT and metal stocks saw huge gains after the US and China announced their tariff decisions. The Nifty IT rose more than 7%, recording the biggest single-day gain that we've seen in 5 years. So that's the markets reacting very positively, of course, to the de-escalation of tensions between India and Pakistan, and also reacting to what's happening in the US. On to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Yes Bank's MD and CEO Prashant Kumar says Japan's Sumitomo Mitsui plans to buy 20% stake in the bank. That will give it an opportunity to avail of lower cost of funds and lending fee-based income. Remember, SBI and other banks are cumulatively selling close to 20% stake to Sumitomo for close to 13,500 crore rupees. This will be one of the largest foreign investments in an Indian private bank. The transaction is currently awaiting approvals from the RBI and the Competition Commission.
Re-rating itself would give us a lot of opportunities, both on funding side as well as on the lending side. We are looking for a re-rating of this, because in the re-rating, one of the issues was always in terms of what is going to happen to the SBI stake. That is one part. The second part, that with the re-rating, definitely your funding cost would also come down. Right? The third part, if such a respectable foreign institution investing in you, it also gives you the mileage in terms of opening your door for a lot of other things.
Well, that's Prashant Kumar there. And more corporate news. Chinese fintech giant Antfil looking to sell up to 4% of its stake in digital payment firm Paytm via block deals. The transaction will be done at the floor price of 810 rupees a share. Antfil will stand to get over 2,000 crore rupees from the stake sale. So that is something to watch out for. Gensol Engineering's managing director Anmol Singh Jaggi and whole-time director Puneet Singh Jaggi have resigned from their positions. This comes nearly a month after the regulator barred the two from holding any positions or direct as key managerial personnel in any listed company. SEBI's interim order had alleged that Gensol Engineering's promoters diverted funds for their personal purposes last week. The Securities Appellate Tribunal has refused to put a stay on SEBI's April 15th order. In earnings, e-scooter maker Ather's net loss narrowed by 17% on a yearly basis in the fourth quarter to 234 crore rupees. This was their first earnings since their market debut last week. The company's revenue rose 29% on an annual basis. The spike in revenue was largely led by Ritza, its newly launched family e-scooter. Veteran investors Motilal Oswal and Ramdev Agarwal will buy shares worth $50 million each in Zepto in their personal capacity. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that the firm Motilal Oswal is also preparing to lead a $250 million secondary round in the company. The quick commerce firm is planning to use the funds raised to buy back shares from its international investors. The fundraising is also aimed at increasing domestic ownership, so that continues to be fairly active in Zepto. India and the European Union have resumed their latest round of talks on a proposed free trade agreement. The talks are scheduled to continue until the 16th of May. Officials have said that the sides have agreed that the agreement will be finalized in 2 phases. Government sources tell CNBC-TV18 that any agreement with the UK or EU relating to the pharmaceutical sector will not hurt domestic companies. Abhimanyu is here with more.
India has refused to accept any demands from the United Kingdom or the EFTA bloc of countries as far as data exclusivity is concerned. That is the word coming in from government sources as far as protection of the interests of the domestic drugs industry, particularly the manufacturers of generic drugs is concerned. Government sources have assured that the interest of the domestic industry, particularly the manufacturers and exporters of generic drugs, would be protected largely as far as FTAs with the EFTA bloc and the United Kingdom is concerned. Now, India's generic drugs sector exports a lot of generic medicines. It exports around 50% of the pharmaceuticals made by it. And the pharmaceutical companies, AstraZeneca and GSK, are based out of the UK, whereas Novartis and Roche are based out of Switzerland. Sources explained that India's stand will forbid these firms from stopping competitors to make low-cost versions. The tenure of data exclusivity would have allowed pharmaceutical companies to stop competitors from getting marketing licenses for low-cost versions. In other words, data exclusivity would have prevented the technical data generated by these innovating pharmaceutical companies from being shared with other companies to make generic drugs. It remains to be seen what impact this stand is going to have on other FTAs which are being negotiated by India, particularly with the United States and the European Union.
Hi, Manu, many thanks for joining us. Up next on India Business Hour, there's a churn in India's 10-minute food delivery space. While Swiggy's Bolt has clearly taken the lead, Zomato has hit the pause button. That and more when we return. And you can catch all of CNBC-TV18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X and Jio Hotstar. In international news, Israeli forces continue to bombard Gaza. At least 17 people were killed at a school sheltering displaced Palestinians. Meanwhile, Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip entered its 71st day. Ukraine's President Zelensky has said he will wait to personally meet Russian President Putin in Turkey to hold talks to end the war. Zelensky added he's hoping that Russia will observe a ceasefire from today. His comments come after Putin rejected an ultimatum by EU leaders to agree to a 30-day ceasefire with Ukraine or face increased sanctions. However, Putin said he was ready for direct talks. The White House is in discussion with Qatar's royal family to receive a luxury jumbo jet that will be used as an Air Force One presidential plane. US President Donald Trump said that the plane would be gifted to the US. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said that the jet will replace the 40-year-old Air Force One temporarily. However, the Qatari government has denied that the plane would be a gift. Trump is expected to discuss arrangements for the jet during his visit to Qatar this week. India's southwestern coast is likely to witness monsoon showers ahead of schedule. The Indian Met Department has said that rains are likely to begin on the 27th of May. Monsoon showers in the region generally begin after the 1st of June. This would be the earliest onset of the monsoon in 5 years. The IMD is also forecast above average monsoon rains in 2025. Well, Virat Kohli retiring from Test cricket and has brought curtains down on an illustrious 14-year career. In a post on social media platforms, Kohli said he was walking away with a heart full of gratitude. The 4th highest Indian run scorer in red ball cricket, Kohli also signed off as India's most successful Test captain ever. And the race for 10-minute food delivery has taken a different route, with Swiggy's Bolt inching towards the finish line. The company's quick delivery vertical contributes to 12% of all of Swiggy's food orders. Zomato has exited the space entirely. Shilpa is here to decode the divergent roads taken. Shilpa, so what's really working for Swiggy and why did Zomato pull the plug?
Well, like you mentioned, Swiggy and Zomato are taking very different approaches to the quick food delivery space, and the contrast couldn't be clear. Now, Swiggy has said that 10-minute food delivery service Bolt is seeing rapid growth, and it now accounts to over 12% of its food delivery orders. It's also seeing a 4 to 6% higher retention of new users that are coming from Bolt. And on the back of this, it has expanded Bolt to over 500 cities in the country with over 45,000 restaurant partners. But here in contrast, right, Zomato during its Q4 earnings said that it is shutting down Quick, citing no clear path to profitability and inconsistent customer service. The company also said that the model did not drive incremental demand and was also logistically too tough to scale, and so it will now instead focus on bringing down the delivery time from 30 minutes to maybe 20 to 25 minutes. So what's then working for Swiggy that's not for Zomato? Well, experts that we spoke to say that Swiggy has worked out a quick delivery menu items with a very dense restaurant network, and even though the average order value is slightly lower than the platform average, the shorter delivery radius means lower delivery costs, and so the margins remain intact and they're not dilutive. Now, it also has a first mover advantage where it seems to have captured demand for quick delivery and away from Zomato. But analysts say that Bolt won't be massive. At best, it could probably peak at about 20 to 25% of food delivery order volumes. And it's helping overall volumes for Swiggy, with the food delivery GOV growth being faster than Zomato's this quarter by about 1.5%, a sign that analysts say it may be gaining market share. Now, analysts say that Zomato will instead focus on offerings like Bistro because it doesn't see quick delivery as a large enough opportunity to justify the effort that will go behind it. And that said, challenges for Swiggy remain: low order value, kitchen infra gaps, and also the cost of maintaining consistency in a high-speed model. And overcoming these will ensure that Bolt and the overall ultra-fast food delivery is a long-term win for Swiggy. Back to you.
Shilpa, many thanks. And back to the top story. In a rush to take the credit for the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, which, by the way, India is not calling a ceasefire, only an understanding between the two countries, US President Donald Trump has made a big U-turn in American foreign policy in South Asia in just 140 words, speaking about India and Pakistan as moral, political and economic equals in his Truth Social post. Trump has undone the so-called process of dehyphenating India and Pakistan, which started after the Kargil War, more than 25 years ago, that is. If the US wants to mediate peace between India and Pakistan, Trump should ask the most important question in any war. But what is that question? Let's go across to Sriram Iyer. Sriram.
The most important question in any war is the objective. That's what Trump needs to ask. What were India and Pakistan's objectives? Right from the beginning of Operation Sindoor, India was very clear. All it wanted was to avenge Pahalgam attack by taking down terror camps across the border. People whom Trump would call radical Islamic terrorists in his first term. Interestingly, he doesn't use that phrase as much in the second term. So India was at war with the terrorists. Did India achieve its objective? I think the answer is yes, to a reasonable extent. What was Pakistan's objective? Nothing except retaliating on behalf of the terrorists. Now that's a dead giveaway that the terrorists are just an extension of the Pakistani army. The problem is not that Trump pushed for a ceasefire. The problem is the 140-word post on Truth Social that seemed to put both India and Pakistan at par, politically, economically, and morally. By ignoring nuance and history, the Trump administration has seemingly reversed a consensus that was built over years. The political and the military establishment in the two countries, India and Pakistan, aren't cut from the same cloth. Something that Americans started to concede after the Kargil War and have explicitly spoken about it at least since 2005, when Condoleezza Rice, the then US State Secretary, spoke about it. Since then, every president, whether it's Obama, Bush, Biden, they've all differentiated between India and Pakistan for at least two reasons. First, India's stature as a counterweight to China has been increasing. India's role as a vaccine supplier to the world gave it a moral edge during the pandemic. The revival of the Quad in 2017, which is a strategic partnership between India, US, Japan and Australia, cemented India's position. The second reason is Pakistan itself. Repeated terror attacks, which were by outfits that were groomed on Pakistani soil. They harbored Osama bin Laden, who was taken out by the Americans without even informing the establishment. Pakistan's increasing reliance on China for its economy eroded the country's image as a credible partner to the West in South Asia. It doesn't seem like Trump and his team considered this part of history. Now, Modi has no choice but to push back against the shift in narrative during the mediation. Whether Trump agrees or not, the reality on the ground won't be very different. India is still a bigger economy, a more self-reliant economy, a better democracy, capable of more discretion than Pakistan. As the US and China negotiate a trade deal, Trump should remember that Pakistan is the one surviving on its pledges to China, not India. Xi Jinping got a much bigger thank you from Shehbaz Sharif than Trump after the ceasefire. Meanwhile, the self-proclaimed Indian nationalists on the internet should remember that the battle is still on. Maybe not on the border, but our negotiators fighting for our rights and prospects with foreign powers across the table need our moral support just as much. Every society needs politics and diplomacy as much as the soldiers' valor.
Sriram, many thanks for joining us. And speaking of President Trump claiming once again that he helped broker a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. In fact, just a short while ago, speaking at a press conference in the US, Trump said that both nations were going hot and heavy. He added that the US stopped a nuclear conflict. And he says, in his words, trade was one of the big reasons for the stop. Take a look.
On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. And they were going at it hot and heavy, and it was seemingly not going to stop. And I'm very proud to let you know that the leadership of India and Pakistan was unwavering, powerful, but unwavering in both cases. And having these, they really were, from the standpoint of having the strength and the wisdom and fortitude to fully know and to understand the gravity of the situation. And we helped a lot. And we helped also with trade. I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade. People have never really used trade the way I used it. That I can tell you. And all of a sudden they said, I think we're going to stop. And they have. And they did it for a lot of reasons. But trade is a big one. We're going to do a lot of trade with Pakistan. We're going to do a lot of trade with India. We're negotiating with India right now. We're going to be soon negotiating with Pakistan. And we stopped the nuclear conflict. I think it could have been a bad nuclear war. Millions of people could have been killed. So I'm very proud of that.
Well, that's quite a statement there, reiterating what he's been posting on Truth Social, but taking it even further, saying now that one of the big reasons for cessation of hostilities between India and Pakistan was the US saying, stop it or we're not going to do trade. And President Trump going as far as to say that they're going to negotiate a trade deal with Pakistan. This is going to be a complex one. We do know from our sources that President Trump's comments have not gone down well with the Indian establishment. This is going to be interesting to see, but President Trump doubling down on what he said there on Truth Social, and that is what he had to just say in a press conference in the White House. Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. The news continues right here on CNBC-TV18. We're back in a moment. Don't go anywhere.